Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. Let's talk boxing. The day of reckoning has come and gone, and it's left us with some very, very memorable fights, moments that we will be talking about for years to come. And there were, of course, a lot of mismatches, a lot of disappointing fights. As a card overall, many of the fights were not that great, to be honest, right? But they involved some big names. They involved some key players in key divisions. So we're going to get technical and we're going to discuss every single one of those fights, but not on the same video. For a start, you guys have low attention spans, and even though I've got rugged good looks, unrivaled intellect and boyish charm, I can't keep you guys interested for that long. So I'm going to do two separate videos. One of them talking about the two co-main events, talking about Anthony Joshua beating OTTO WALLIN and also Deontay Wilder falling at the hands of Joseph Parker. And then tomorrow I'm going to upload a second video where we talk about the undercard fights. Jarrell Miller, Daniel Dubois, that was a really good fight. We'll talk about that and all of the stars of the show that appeared on the undercard, and a brilliant performance by Ajit Kabayel, by the way. And it reinforces a point I've been making that if you came at me about, but I'm going to save it for another video. So we'll start off with Anthony Joshua, the return of the Jedi, the return of the Joshua. I'm referencing Star Wars, but I've never seen it, by the way. Let me know in the comment section down below whether I'm missing out or not. And I'm not talking about from you dudes that have that fetish over Princess Leia. I'm talking about actual movie buffs out there. Should I be watching this movie? Are you gonna block me and unfollow me for not having seen it? But in terms of the fight itself, I've been speaking for a long time about Anthony Joshua being the victim of narratives that are overstated. I too do believe that he went through a period that was somewhat akin to post-traumatic stress disorder. It's very difficult for an athlete to go through some traumatic experiences and try to get back on the saddle. You get people that will drive a car and they love driving and they speed a little bit too much and they have a car accident. And all of a sudden, when they want to get back inside the car and they're terrific drivers and they were speed freaks, they can't even drive to the speed limit because of those dark memories from these terrible car crashes they had. Now, you can overcome the scars of PTSD, but it takes time. And you've got to desensitize yourself and get back in the car and become used to driving again. Driving a little bit faster, safely, right? We're talking about a motorway. I'm not encouraging anyone to go break any rules out there, any laws. But I'm just trying to explain that there's a process involved. And with AJ, there was a process. But I always thought it was vastly overstated when people would say things like, he's done. He would be a guy that used to come out there and throw these vicious combinations. That's not Anthony Joshua anymore. Slow your roll with that. I did a video a few months ago. I was basically saying that, in my opinion, this is the closest AJ's been to the best possible version of himself that he can be. Because from a technical perspective, he's a brilliant boxer puncher. He's a very good technical fighter. This idea that he needs to be aggressive and throw all of these combinations, when he used to fight like that, he used to make a lot of errors. He'd throw the right hand, and as he'd finish the trajectory of the punch, his hand would come low, leaving him open to a potential counter left hook. He would also gas. At best, he could fight in that way in bursts. You can't sustain that. This is why after he had his little breakdown after the Alexander Usyk fight and he went off on one on the microphone, he actually made a fair point where he was saying that I can't fight like Rocky Marciano and throw these combinations. Not that Marciano was a combination puncher, right? But that's neither here nor there. But he said I can't fight like him because he was 14 stone. What he's basically telling you is that there are different types of athletes. There are aerobic athletes and there are anaerobic athletes. There are guys who are explosive and can go full throttle for short periods and then they have to relax. Then you've got others that can sustain long-term work for a long time. No matter how hard Usain Bolt trains, he's never going to beat Mo Farah in a 10,000 meter race. And no matter how hard Mo Farah trains, he's never going to beat Usain Bolt in a 100 meter race. And no matter how hard they work together and act as a tag team trying to lift the same weight together, they're never going to be able to lift more than the world's strongest man, because there are different forms of athleticism. You've got power, strength, speed, stamina, coordination, balance, spatial awareness, dexterity. There are a million different things. And your biomechanics, your body, what you're capable of doing should dictate the style of fighting you have. And for me, AJ is best as a technical boxer puncher. So all these people that get frustrated with AJ, try and understand he's actually doing the best he can do for himself. And he's a top class fighter. Sure, he lost to Alexander Usyk on a couple of occasions. I told you in the technical preview to the first fight, I think AJ will be given the decision, but the Usyk fans will be coming out here and telling you their man was robbed. I expected Usyk to outbox Anthony Joshua. In other words, don't just assume because you personally might have thought, Usyk's too small, he's just a cruiserweight. Alexander Usyk was no smaller than Muhammad Ali. Just because these guys are getting bigger and bigger these days, it doesn't mean that he's small, right? He is a supreme heavyweight. He's one of the best fighters ever, Alexander Usyk. Go and look at the accomplishments this man has had. When one top fighter, a great fighter, loses to another great fighter, it doesn't make them less of a fighter. I'm a firm believer in styles making fights. A 7 out of 10 fighter can beat a 9 out of 10 fighter if he's all wrong for him. I believe in styles, not levels. I don't dismiss levels. A 5 out of 10 fighter can't beat a 9 out of 10 fighter, even if he has got a star that's all wrong for the 9 out of 10. But when they're close enough that he can catch him up because he's all wrong for him, he can overcome him. Well, with Alexander Usyk, not only do you have a very high-level southpaw, and go and look at some of the most legendary heavyweights and indeed boxers of all time, go and see how few top-level southpaws they had on their CVs. Many of them would avoid top-level southpaws like the plague. They would outright duck them. They didn't want to know. The angles are completely different. So not only have you got a guy who's a top-level southpaw, he's elite regardless by any standard. Okay, one top-level fighter, Anthony Joshua, elite-level boxer-puncher in my opinion, lost to another one. Okay, well, imagine we were around in the, Twitter was around in the George Foreman, Joe Frazier days. The way Joe Frazier got annihilated by George. He'd be getting called a bum and all sorts. When Ali fought Frazier, the first time, the big fight, when it was known as the fight of the century, and Frazier beat Ali, and all the celebrities came out to watch the fight, the biggest fight there'd ever been, did that make Ali less of a fighter? What about when Ali won the rematch? Did that make Frazier less of a fighter? Things happen, styles make fights. The point I'm making here is that AJ has been able to adapt a style that, in my opinion, works for him. And you saw against Otto Wallin, as we said in the technical breakdown, he's a tricky southpaw, but I don't think he's elite. Today, what you saw is the difference between a world-class fighter and a very good fighter in Otto Wallin. But here's the thing. As I explained in the preview, when you're up against the guy who the angles are difficult against, it takes time to get used to that. If he's fought him twice in the amateurs, in over 3 rounds, and he beat him twice in the amateurs, and they've sparred as well since then. And AJ was still confident enough to want to make the fight before a big Deontay Wilder fight where the bag's involved. All that money's on the line, right? If he's not going to get the better of him over short fights, 3-round fights when he's a southpaw and he can't be tricky enough, what makes you think he's going to bamboozle him over 12 rounds? There was just nothing there to tell me that Otto Wallin was going to beat Anthony Joshua. I just couldn't see it. And when you look at the fight, from the very first moment it started, it became apparent that Anthony Joshua was superior. He was controlling the first round with a jab, but at least there were a couple of moments there that gave some promise if you were an Otto Wallin fan. For a start, he landed a nice backhand to the body. There was one shot, and I did explain in the preview that that's a shot that is potentially there for AJ, and he often doesn't see it coming, and he fully absorbs it. That straight hand to the body, whether it was Andy Ruiz, whether it was Usyk out of a southpaw stance, he often absorbs it and bends forward. And when you're a big muscular man like that and you need oxygen for those muscles and someone's really punching through the target, over the course of the fight when you're trying to take a deep breath, it can seriously affect you. So it was good for Wallin to do that. The other area that he had success with in that first round is that he landed a nice counter right hook. He slipped inside and threw a right hook right at the end of the round, but he was looking static. And I was thinking, why isn't he moving? Why isn't he on his bike? He should be moving around the ring trying to get AJ to reset. Use your advantages. Try and be the more mobile man. He wasn't doing that. By the second round, you saw that Wallin, the only success he started to have from that point forth was a counter jab over the top of AJ's jab. So again, the vast majority of the times, AJ's dictating with the jab. On occasion, he would be, when they're trying to establish that lead hand dominance and patting each other's hands down and creating openings, on occasion he would come over the top of AJ's jab, land his own jab. But it was AJ that was getting a dominant foot position. He was the one that was being able to have the better feet, step on the outside, line up the backhand to the center line, and he'd throw the backhand down the pipe to the body, to the solar plexus. And it was Wallin that started to absorb those shots fully, and AJ couldn't miss. And that pattern continued. And apart from a sporadic shot here and there that Wallin was trying to land as a counter, AJ was the one landing the flashier shots too. In the third round, he landed a really nice left hook. In the fourth round, you saw a counter right hand from Anthony Joshua, and Wallin was still just stationary, and it was baffling to me as to what he was trying to do. Was he hoping that he could gas AJ? If you're going to do that, you've got to apply the foot pressure. You can't let Anthony Joshua dictate the tempo while standing in the pocket. I think he was trying to go straight back at AJ. Maybe he convinced himself that AJ is chinny. Again, another thing that I've said is overstated. I'm not saying he's got a granite chin. He can be hurt, particularly to the, above the ear, sort of in the temple area. That can sort of cause AJ some issues and has done on a few occasions, the high left hook. But he's not a chinny guy, power puncher. He's never been knocked out, AJ. He was stopped by Ruiz. Many people thought he quit, but he took a bit of a beating throughout the course of the build-up to that. He was dropped by Vladimir Klitschko. He got up and he won the fight. He's not chinny. So I'm not sure what Wallin was trying to do. In the fifth round, you saw a beautiful little move from Anthony Joshua. He threw a jab to the body, and he was shaping up as though he was going to go with the backhand to the body, which he'd been doing successfully. And instead, he shaped up his hand, and it's almost as though he put a little bit of a loop on the right hand just to get the knuckles turned over, and he actually came upstairs and landed on Otto Wallin. So he's starting to use misdirection as well, showing that he's thinking about what he's doing. And then the highlight moment came when he used a lovely pull counter, pulled back through a right hand, followed by a left hook combination, and it hurt Otto Wallin. And Wallin did not come out for the sixth round. He was outgunned, he was outclassed, and it was a brilliant performance from Anthony Joshua. Now, where does he go from here? There's talk that he could potentially fight Hrgovic for the vacant IBF title after the first Fury and Usyk fight. If they vacate the IBF title, then that would leave an opening for a world title. And I certainly can't blame Anthony Joshua for going down that route. But if they're not going to vacate, if they're going to be able to make a deal with the IBF, we're going to defend against each other, a second undisputed fight, that would leave AJ out of action from a world title for a very long time. So I'm sure they're going to consider various options. I'd like to think that the Deontay Wilder fight, as it stands currently, is off the table. The Wilder we saw today looked horrible. We'll talk about that in a moment. But you can't sell us that fight. So that leaves, in my opinion, Daniel Dubois. That could be interesting from a domestic perspective, a domestic rivalry perspective. Dubois has spoken about the fact that he's dropped AJ in the past, whether you believe that or not, who knows. But he does carry power, Daniel Dubois, and his feet are very, very good. So that would be a very interesting fight. And we'll talk about his brilliant performance on tomorrow night's video. You've also got the potential of Zhilei Zhang. That one really makes the mouth water. Two high-level Olympians met each other in the amateurs. AJ got the better of him back then. Zhilei Zhang has very short power, a southpaw, very, very good at varied shots. Anthony Joshua, the superior athlete. Zhang has some stamina issues. There are questions there. That's a very, very interesting fight. You've also got the potential of him fighting someone like Joseph Parker now. The first fight, AJ won. It wasn't a very good fight. But in fairness to Joseph Parker, when he was trying to get inside and he had one arm free, you had the referee that would constantly break them up, put them at the end of the stick again, and now Joseph Parker can't get inside to operate on the inside. He was never going to win that fight. Whereas now, Parker might turn around and say, listen, I've changed now. I'm not the mover I used to be. I hold my feet a lot more. I can get inside. And if I've got a fair referee that's going to let me operate, it makes the fight much more interesting. In other words, whichever way Anthony Joshua goes now, you're going to be interested in the fights that he's going to be in, right? So let me know what your preference is. You know, even the Hrgovic fight with no title at all on the line, it's a very interesting fight. Hrgovic carries power. He's tall. He's going to have the sort of dimensions that Anthony Joshua might not have dealt with for a while, to have the combination of certain amount of athleticism with that size. I'm not talking about a Robert Helenius. I'm talking about a guy that's going to come to win in Hrgovic, even if he does divide opinion. So there's a lot there to be excited for moving forward for Anthony Joshua. Let me know what your opinion is on the future of AJ. Now, that moves us on to the narrative that's started to circle around this and what happened tonight, and we'll take us on to the Deontay Wilder discussion. I've had a lot of people say, Tyson Fury tonight, Chris, don't you think he had an abysmal night? Even though he wasn't in the ring, it ruins his legacy. Guys, when Anthony Joshua was being criticised after the Alexander Usyk fight, I did a video called The Defense of Anthony Joshua. When people were saying he's shook and he's washed and he's done, I was putting out videos saying actually he's the closest he's been to the best version of himself. I don't buy into narratives. I don't argue for the sake of it, just to be contrarian. I just don't overreact to things that I see. You have to place things in the context of their time. When Deontay Wilder fought Tyson Fury, he was not the equivalent of the man you saw in there tonight. And it's ludicrous to suggest that. I'm not going to take away from Lennox Lewis beating Mike Tyson because Mike Tyson then lost to Danny Williams, right? You've got to put things into the context of their time. When Mike Tyson lost to Danny Williams, it was a couple of years after he'd lost to Lennox Lewis. He was 38 years old at the time. Well, Deontay Wilder had last fought Tyson Fury a couple of years ago too. And guess what? He's 38 years old too now. You have to place things into perspective. You're not just going to undermine CVs because you got your favorite fighter here or there. And by the same token, like I said, when it was the other side going after AJ, again, I was defending AJ. It was a brilliant performance from Anthony Joshua. Fantastic from Joseph Parker. But Wilder looked terrible. And when I say fantastic from Joseph Parker, listen, I really like Joe. And I've spoken for many years about how I felt he had so much talent. And I used to defend him when a lot of people used to say to me, he's an overrated bum. And I used to say, actually, he's very talented. I was high on him when he first came out. I thought he could have a really good career, but mentally there was a gap. Whether he was willing to go through the fire and show that aggression that was needed. He was never a bottle job. He'd never have a glass jaw and give up. But to have that fire in his belly, that aggression, that willingness to go to a dark place to take a guy out and hurt a guy, maybe he was lacking that a little bit, Joseph Parker. But the talent was there. Well, tonight, he got his tactics spot on. And that helped get him over the line, because what we spoke about in the preview is that Deontay Wilder has long power. For him to deliver his shot, he has to step in first with a jab, get a lot of coverage, deliver that shot. It's that full rotation that ends up creating the delivery of that power. And when you stop him from being able to do that, for instance, Tyson Fury in the third fight, when his legs weren't what they used to be, Fury, he wasn't moving away as well as he used to. Rather than move back, he decided to go forward, to collapse the pocket, to smother the power before it can be released. It's almost like blocking a bullet before it leaves the barrel, right? That's what he was trying to do. And I explained how I felt that Joseph Parker would use those tactics. And that although I thought that Deontay Wilder would land the right hand eventually and take him out, I was making that comment if Deontay Wilder was still the same guy. As I explained in the preview, He's had 1 round of fights in 2 years. He's been very inactive. He's been engaging and dabbling with that ayahuasca brew, and he's been saying that it's affected him mentally. It's changed who he is. You know, his dynamics, his mental dynamics have changed. He hasn't got that same swagger. He's not that guy. And you could see it when he was coming down to the ring. And I put it out there on Twitter, and Base the Kid was agreeing, saying I thought I was the only one that could see it. He looked nervous. Where was the guy that used to walk to the ring and he'd take that mask off? He'd have this, you know, elaborate clothing. He'd take the mask off, and then all of a sudden he's trying to put on this screw face and look into the camera, right? And he's sending a message out to say, I'm the baddest man in here. I'm the man who with one shot can render any guy unconscious. I'm the man that wants a body on my CV, and guess what? You're on the other side of this corner of this ring, and you're the guy I want to be that body on the CV. Where was that man? He wasn't there. And I was toying with the idea, is he just being calm and, you know, like an assassin, just ready for his moment, and then all of a sudden you're going to see him start trash talking and going to another level? Or has he actually changed? And I was actually leaning towards the idea that he's just playing possum. He's acting calm. But at no point have you seen that change. To switch back into that bronze bomber. The bronze bomber seems to be gone to me. That was Deontay Wilder, the man who was once a ferocious fighter, who now has problems with his timing. Inactivity is going to cause that. He's aging. Joseph Parker got his tactics spot on, but he didn't do anything spectacular. He was all the way on the outside, and he'd be aggressive by trying to enter with lead power shots, often that over the top right hand. And he would duck often a lot when Deontay Wilder was then willing to throw the right hand to time that. But he would duck in the same area in the same way to get out the way of a shot as he would to set up the over the top right hand. Why wasn't Wilder, who usually has really good timing and accuracy, able to find that shot over the course of 12 rounds? Since you're not able to find that shot over the course of 12 rounds, why aren't you adjusting? He was never leading off. He was always waiting for the entry in the hope to time him. Why wasn't he doing what he used to do and take that deep step forward with the jab to shoot out that right hand? If you're going to play the game of waiting for him to come, why aren't you planting your feet more and shooting the jab and keeping him on the end of the jab, making him have to bypass your long jab in order to come inside so you can then lure him onto the shot? If you are going to have those narrow feet and you're going to move around the ring, the logic behind that is, listen, if I can get on the back foot, as he's turning, before he resets, I can land a shot, or alternatively, as I'm moving, I can shift my position so I can line up my backhand with his center line. That way, as I throw a jab and line the backhand, I can throw it straight down the pipe. Why wasn't he putting himself in a position where he was stepping into that? If you're going to have those narrow feet and you're looking to do that, you have to be able to step in. If you're not going to step in, and you're just going to move around and wait, if you're going to wait for the entry, you can't afford to have narrow feet. You've got to have a wider stance, because if you've got a wider stance, you've got a better base, and you're ready to unload. You're essentially already putting your weight onto that back foot, leaning away, making the guy overreach, so then you're in a position ready to rotate. When you've got narrow feet and he's entering the pocket, you're then leaning back, you're on your heels, you're off balance. How are you ever going to come back? How many times did Joseph Parker come in and Wilder's leaning back onto those ropes and he can't possibly throw anything back? And when he's trying to throw short punches, as we explained, because he doesn't have short power, he's not able to bust him up with short hooks and uppercuts. He doesn't have that in his arsenal. It's not part of his game. He's got a really nice left hook, almost like a slapping left hook, but he needs a little bit of space. He needs a lot of coverage, a lot of space for that long right hand, and he's got a really nice jab. He didn't use the left hook in the correct way. The jab he completely ignored. His footwork was completely wrong for what he was trying to do by luring Parker on, and the right hand was so inaccurate that Parker, even when he was ducking predictable patterns, he couldn't line him up. In my opinion, Deontay Wilder needs to retire. He looked washed. He looked shot. You've made a lot of money. You entered the sport to provide your family with a better life. You can do that now, Deontay. You've left a very good legacy. Sure, there are people that will be questioning how deep is his CV from a historical context. Make no mistake, this is one of the biggest punchers in the history of boxing. He has some very good victories. Luis Ortiz was a brilliant fighter. He took him out twice. But Main Stiverne, the first time they fought, was a very good fighter. He took him out as well. Tyson Fury, brilliant fighter. He gave a great account of himself in those 3 fights. He's built enough of a legacy as well. There's nothing left to prove. He's too old to be able to rebuild himself and, add new strings to his bow. So what's he going to do? Just sit there and say, let me fight guys that aren't quite as mobile so that I can line them up with the right hand? What is the aim here? Go for one more big payday and get in there with Anthony Joshua? What happens if you get hurt? God forbid. You got a family, man. Walk away. That's my genuine opinion. You're not the guy you used to be. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents, about all that we've spoken about. Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, all the technical elements. Don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.